There's a man, a woman, champagne. Of course, that leads to kissing. He says he wants to change into something more comfortable.
I'd like to slip into something more comfortable.
And in like 20 seconds, he changes out of his uniform and into what looks like a satin tuxedo. It is Sunday, July 21st, 2024, and on this week's edition of Sunday Sofa Time, we're talking about a horrible show called The Love Boat. The Love Boat is an American television series that aired from 1977 to 1986. There was 10 seasons of this show, and I think it's safe to say that if it wasn't for this show, the cruise industry might not have become as popular as it is nowadays. This was a fictional depiction of what cruising was like back then, what it was like for the crew, what it was like for the passengers. And I think anybody of my generation or older has probably seen at least one episode of this, and just about everybody knows the theme song, The Love Boat. Recently, on a Facebook post, one of you out there, Bonnie, said, Morgan, you should do a Sunday Sofa Time where you look at how the cruise industry has changed and look at words that we used to use on cruise ships that have been replaced by something else. I thought that was a great idea, but I realized I don't know a lot of those words, so I thought, hey, you know what? I should watch The Love Boat. I bet I'll learn a lot from that. And people, holy crap, we're gonna look at an episode right now, and I was shocked. So what I literally did was just go to YouTube and search for Love Boat entire episodes. It just randomly suggested this one. It's Love Boat Season 1, Episode 23, with Paul Williams as a guest star. And before we go through this full episode and I show you how nasty this show was, let me just remind you that I'm Morgan from the Very Unofficial Travel Guides. I've been making travel videos now for over 15 years of popular and not so popular tourist destinations to give you a very honest, unofficial look at what it's like to be there. And I also wrote a little book called Getting Stitches on a Cruise Ship with weird and funny stories about things that have actually happened to me around the world. Thank God, none of them were on The Love Boat. If you like to read or want to give me a little bit of support, you can check it out on Amazon now. And I'm about to leave for 3.5 weeks of traveling, including a cruise on the Utopia of the Seas. So I'm recording a lot of videos in advance, and they're all gonna be on my Patreon account, which is patreon.com/veryunofficial. So if you want to give me a little more support and also see a bunch of videos before everybody else, then go check out patreon.com/veryunofficial and join all the other amazing people who are there already. Okay, here we go. It begins with a very long opening credit sequence where we hear this entire Love Boat song. We see the cast of characters. Television shows aren't done like this anymore. I feel like nobody would sit down and watch this long of an opening credit sequence. So it says here, this is the Love Boat crew, and there are a lot of positions here that we recognize, like the captain, of course. But one that I don't think anybody talks about anymore is the yeoman purser. This is basically somebody who will work at the front desk, but the purser actually is in charge of the ship's manifest. So the list of passengers and also probably like the list of cargo on board. Maybe nowadays on cruise ships behind the scenes, that's still like what the job description is called, but I think passenger facing, nobody knows it as the purser anymore, do they? Okay, 2 minutes later, the show finally starts and we see the passengers boarding the ship. They're talking to the purser and the cruise director, Julie. And we're introduced to this couple, Kurt and Dee Dee. Kurt is a very stereotypical portrait of a macho pig, basically.
Hi, Sugar. I'm Kurt Stenzel, and this is Dee Dee Donnelly, my chick.
Hi, chick. We're engaged.
Having ourselves a little early honeymoon. Right, Sugar Face, huh?
Oh, curse.
It's the finest animal I've ever owned.
Not only does he refer to Dee Dee as his chick, but he also says, the finest animal I've ever owned. And let me just tell you people, if you already think this is awful, you're not ready for what's coming. So, next passenger that we are introduced to is this guy.
Yeah, I'm Adam Bricker, the ship's doctor.
Nelson Hogue.
Hi.
Are there going to be a lot of single girls on this cruise?
Well, we get our share.
Is there any special place they hang out?
Not really, if you don't count my cabin. Say, there's one of your basic single girls right there.
The doctor jokes about having a bunch of single girls in his cabin to a passenger. The character's name is Nelson, but this is actually Paul Williams. And Paul Williams is a very successful musician who not only wrote songs for like the Carpenters and Barbra Streisand and Three Dog Night, but he also wrote the lyrics for The Love Boat. He also wrote the Rainbow Connection for the Muppets too. The next passenger we meet is Irene Germain. She's going through kind of like a midlife crisis now that she's single again, and she wants to pretend that she's living this jet set life and is a strong, independent woman who jet sets around the world with all her famous friends.
I want to meet someone glamorous. And in order to meet someone glamorous, I gotta be someone glamorous. Look, I gotta go. You just call me 5 times a day and make up important names.
So in order to keep up this personality, she makes a deal with her sister that her sister needs to call her on the cruise ship on the telephone, pretending to be famous people because that will help her impress the other guests on board. So Irene boards the ship and walks past the captain and the doctor, who just happen to be standing there in the lobby. You know, nothing else to do on embarkation day. And oh my gosh, is this captain not creepy?
Certainly should be.
Who is that tawny creature?
Dr. Bricker, that tawny creature is off limits to you.
Germaine, quite. Well, then all of these are for you.
Welcome to the Princess, Captain Merrill Stubing, at your command.
How sweet. Fascinating woman, isn't she, Captain Stubing? Captain Stubing.
The captain tells the doctor, don't flirt with her. She's reserved for me. That would happen nowadays. A captain just approaching a single female passenger to flirt with her. Next, it's time for Bon Voyage, and this is something that you definitely don't see anymore. Everybody standing on deck, waving and throwing confetti and ticker tape. Are you from the cruising generation who still remembers that? Let me know in the comments. In the next scene, we get a first look inside one of the cabins on board, and this is, just take a look at this.
Give the big guy a kiss.
No! Come on, you don't care about me. To you, I'm just some chick.
No, you're not some chick. You're my chick. Okay, you're a person. Now shut up before I belt you.
Not only does he insult her, treat her like his property, but he also threatens to hit her.
Oh, yeah? Well, adios, amigo, yourself. Get out of the cabin and leave me alone.
I paid for the cabin. There's the door, baby. When you cool down, why don't you come back? I need a back rub. Oh, and bring me some cigarettes.
Okay, first things first, let's take a look around this cabin. One thing you'll notice is plants. I don't think I've ever seen real plants in a cruise ship cabin. Also, because they're not married for television back in the 70s, and that doesn't seem like too long ago, but they show 2 beds in the cabin, which seems really weird when you consider everything else that's about to happen in this show. But so Kurt and Dee Dee have a fight, and this girl is smart because she leaves him. So at least they got that right. All right, next thing is we find out that Paul Williams' character has to get married by the end of the cruise because his uncle left him money in the will, but says that he'll only get the money if he's married before he's 25 years old. And one thing I wanted to mention is this is what a not yet 25-year-old looked like in the 70s.
I'm Nelson Hope. Would you marry me?
Doesn't anyone want to play shuffleboard anymore?
Don't feel bad. She didn't buy my line either. It's not a line. I have to get married.
So he goes to ask this passenger if she'll marry him and comes back and complains to the purser, and the purser makes it clear that he's also flirted with her too. In the next scene, Dee Dee shows up at the front desk in tears because she's looking for a new cabin. The ship has already left the dock. She has to stay on board, but she doesn't want to stay with the creepy guy she came with. Good for you, Dee Dee. But the purser says, unfortunately, it's a full ship. There is no extra cabin. And look at this. He has handwritten notes.
I have moved out of my boyfriend's cabin, and I would like a cabin of my own, please.
Oh, ma'am. The ship is booked to the gunnels. There isn't a cabin I can give you.
Oh, I can't go crawling back to him. That's exactly what he wants me to do.
Can you imagine checking in everybody on like the Oasis of the Seas nowadays with handwritten lists? Yeah, that's not gonna happen. But so as she's standing there crying, the ship's doctor comes around the corner again, and even though he hasn't heard any of the conversation, he somehow knows what's going on. He's so condescending and creepy to her, and then the ship's doctor offers her a passenger to stay in his cabin.
Let me see if I can find this.
No, I can't bear to see a beautiful woman cry. As it happens, I can help. I have a very, very large cabin. I rattle around in there all by myself. Consider it yours.
Oh, really?
Certainly. After all, as the ship's doctor, it's my job to make people feel good. Cabin C-117. The door's open.
And she's so happy that she just kisses him right on the lips.
Dr. Becker, thank you very much. See.
All right, cut to the next scene. It's much later in the evening, and we see the doctor, still in his uniform, having cocktails with Dee Dee, a guest, just, hanging out in the lounge. Another interesting thing to note here is that all the passengers are dancing in couples, and they're all wearing tuxedos and evening gowns. Those are two things that you will rarely see on like a Royal Caribbean or Carnival ship nowadays. And once again, we see the captain just casually strolling around the ship in the evening. He sees Irina here and decides he's gonna sit down and have a drink with her. Because, that's what captains do on cruise ships. The captain says hello again, and then all of a sudden, the bartender shows up with like a normal telephone with a cable on it. Like, where is this cable connected to? How did they know that she's sitting in the bar? And did cruise ships really have telephones like this back in the 70s? Anyways, the bartender's like, oh, Miss Germain, there's a telephone call for you.
Good evening, Miss Germain.
Oh, good evening, Captain.
Miss Germain, telephone call.
Oh.
It's, Rudolph Nureyev.
And it's her sister pretending to be somebody famous so she can impress the captain. The captain gets frustrated and leaves, and the next scene is Dee Dee in the cabin with the doctor. Should we take a look around the doctor's cabin here? Not only do we have like a full stereo unit here, there's also large plants and pictures on the wall, normal lamps, several things that are definitely not cruise ship safe. As soon as this ship starts moving a little bit, all this crap is gonna fall over. And should we mention that this passenger is now getting into the cruise doctor's bed?
I feel a lot better about everything. You're a very sweet guy to let me sleep in your bed.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Gee, are you going out in the corridor and that?
No, I wasn't planning to.
Oh. Where are you going to sleep?
Well, I was planning... That is... I thought we could both...
Oh, sleep here?
He comes out of the bathroom, and it's made clear that he's planning on sleeping in the bed with her tonight. Dee Dee, being the smart girl that she is like,
no you're not.
And then the boyfriend shows up. They have a little argument, and then the boyfriend, who's a passenger, punches the doctor in the face.
I'll knock your block off, Four Eyes.
What does the doctor do after that? Does he call security to mention that a passenger just socked him in the face? No! He goes across the hall to ask the bartender if he can stay in the bartender's cabin. But the bartender says no, because he's working on getting a different passenger to come down to his cabin later that evening.
I'd like to help you, but I got this cutie up in the Starlight Bar, and I thought I'd kind of...
Say no more. Thanks anyway.
Good, Doc. You're a sport.
Here's another thing I want to show you. So I didn't talk about this before, but this woman is actually a reporter, and she's on board because she wants to report about what life is like and how scandalous it is on cruise ships. And the way they're showing it in this episode, it definitely was. But this is a passenger, and she's hiding out in the area of the ship where the crew cabins are. Another thing that probably not going to happen nowadays. A passenger is not going to make it very far in the crew area on a ship before they get noticed, I would assume. So the doctor ends up in Julie's cabin, the cruise director, and look at Julie's cabin. This looks like a full-on apartment. There's like a dresser, there's several bookshelves with books and vases and tons of things that are definitely not going to just fall right over as soon as the ship starts moving. Then, in a weird twist, Julie comes on to the doctor.
Here we are, two passably attractive human beings of the opposite sex. Why haven't you made an overture?
Julie? That'd be like making a pass at my own kid's sister. Good night.
Julie, one of the most attractive women on the ship, is disappointed that she gets turned down by the doctor, and the doctor is disgusted by her advances and decides to sleep in the bathtub. Now, Julie is so frustrated that the doctor will sleep with anybody except her that she goes up to the bar where we see the bartender, as mentioned, flirting with a passenger. She sits down next to Paul Williams' character and and she drinks out of his drink.
You can have mine.
Thanks. Well, Nelson, I thought you were all locked up for the evening.
A crew member or a woman at all drinking out of a stranger's drink? Not a good idea. They take an entire bottle of whiskey back to his cabin, have a short discussion, and then she ends up sleeping in his bed. So we have now the cruise director sleeping in a passenger's cabin. And he goes back out to look for a wife. Cut to the next day and we are on the pool deck, and look at the set. This is definitely a set that was built just for the show, and I think that looks pretty realistic, you know? There's like even real water in that pool. Pretty cool. And check out this outfit. Look at those shorts and socks. This is definitely the 70s, and I have to tell you, I have pictures of me in the 70s also wearing shorts and socks of that length. Another interesting thing to note is there are no deck chairs reserved here. Definitely wouldn't see it like that nowadays. And then the captain just comes casually strolling around again, also in shorts. Of course, the bartender also has a telephone right behind the bar with a super long cable, and the person who calls somehow ends up at the bar where Irina just happens to be, and the bartender carries the telephone all the way across the pool deck to this passenger. This is so stupid. And look at him standing over here on the pool deck in his shorts, staring at a passenger having a telephone call. And oh my gosh, the captain's shorts, those shorts are pulled all the way up. In between, there's a short scene where Dee Dee's boyfriend shows up again, tries to apologize, but we see that what he really wants to do is force her to sleep with him, which does not go well. And then we cut back up to the pool deck a little bit later where Irene has this conversation with the captain.
No, gorgeous captain. When are you going to give me a captain's tour of this magnificent liner?
Well, any time. At your convenience.
No time like the present. Shall we?
My honor.
He offers to take her on a private tour of the ship and says any time is a good time because, you know, what else is a captain doing on board other than flirting with passengers and taking them on private tours of the ship? I mean, that's what they do, right? So a little while later, they're standing on the promenade deck having a conversation, and I just want to point out the body language here. They have it so that she's like leaning back a little bit, which is sort of an uncomfortable position to be in, and the captain is leaning towards her, over her, which, I don't know, there's just something about it that looks, for her, very uncomfortable, and for him, very dominant in a way.
You know, Irene, I like your style.
And I like yours, Meryl.
And not long after that, we see the captain taking this passenger back to his cabin. There's a man, a woman, champagne. Of course, that leads to kissing. He says he wants to change into something more comfortable.
I'd like to slip into something more comfortable.
And in like 20 seconds, he changes out of his uniform and into what looks like a satin tuxedo. Irene tries to get out of the situation really quick. She's getting cold feet, and then she ends up coming clean to the captain about who she really is. Okay, and this is where it starts to get really weird, because while she's telling the captain that she can't put up this facade any longer, she says that what she's realized she really needs is not this independency and this free, open life. What she really needs is a man that she can cook and clean for and iron his shirts.
What I realize now is what I need isn't a shipboard fling, but a man at home I can cook for and clean for and iron shirts for. I need what I used to have.
Because, you know, that's what makes a woman happy. The captain totally understands.
I can't be that man.
Still is a little bit flirty, and you're not gonna believe what happens next. She goes out on deck and runs into Kurt or Carl or whatever Dee Dee's boyfriend's name was again. You know, the macho asshole. They have a short conversation and then she falls madly in love with him.
People have to tell the world that they're the greatest because nobody's telling them they're the greatest.
Yeah?
You're the greatest.
Okay. Meanwhile, Dee Dee meets Paul Williams' character and they fall in love too.
I have a full scrapbook of pictures of Benjamin in my cabin. Would you like to see it?
Yes, I would.
Which is actually much more realistic. They end up spending the night together and we cut to the next morning and Paul Williams is bringing in coffee, like room service in the morning, and it's like 7 a.m. and he's wearing a suit. Nowadays, people wear pajamas everywhere all day long. And in the 70s, you would wake up and put on a suit, I guess. Anyways, she asks him to marry her, and that's a good thing.
Will you marry me?
Huh?
You are the most wonderful man I've ever met. You're kind and considerate. Please say you'll marry me.
You'll marry me.
After that, there's a big party in a crew cabin where all the officers are present along with some passengers. The captain finds out, shows up, and instead of breaking up this party, goes in and orders the purser to bring some more champagne. And in the final scene, we see all the happy new lovebirds leaving the ship together. It is also confirmed that the reporter and the purser got it on, an officer and a passenger having sex during a cruise. And then they all stand around together and laugh at the situation. Roll end credits. So, what did we learn about cruising from this episode of The Love Boat? I don't even know where to start. And I think I definitely need to watch some other episodes just to make sure that they weren't all this gross. If you've watched this far, do you think I should react to another episode? And if you want me to do that, send me some suggestions of which episode you think I should react to, and then I won't watch it. I'll turn on the camera and we can watch it together somehow. This is definitely not realistic. I'm sure that cruising wasn't really like this back then, but I'm sure that there are people out there that would watch this show and get the impression that there was some similarities between the atmosphere on board and the way that the officers act and interact with the passengers to real life. I don't know. I mean, as a kid watching this in the 70s, I would have no reason to not think that it was like this. I wouldn't have known the difference. But I'm pretty sure that it is against the rules on any ship nowadays for the crew to invite passengers into the crew only area or into their cabin, or to have passengers stay overnight in their cabin, and definitely the crew cannot be having sex with passengers. I'm not saying that it probably doesn't happen, but I'm pretty sure that it is not supposed to be happening, and there's a lot of good reasons for that. I hope you enjoyed watching this horrible episode of The Love Boat with me, Morgan, from the Very Unofficial Travel Guides. I'll be back here soon with another fun travel related video, and I hope you will too. Bye bye.